The advice and opinions expressed by the host of Autism Live and her guests are meant solely as suggestion and should not be in any way construed as child-specific advice. The Center for Autism and Related Disorders advises working with a board-certified behavior analyst who has experience with autism before starting any intensive behavioral intervention. Any choices you make in determining your child's treatment are completely at your own discretion.
Good morning and welcome to Autism Live. I'm Shannon Penrod. We're webcasting to you live from the Warner Center in Woodland Hills, California. So thrilled to be here with you this morning. I know we weren't here with you yesterday, but we're here today and tomorrow. We've got amazing shows for you, amazing guests. In fact, today, in just a few minutes, we'll be doing Ask Dr. Doreen. Dr. Doreen Granpeesheh is here to answer your questions live and in real time. And then in our second hour today, during Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy, Nancy is away, understandably, but our very special guest today is Elaine Hall. That's Coach E from the Miracle Project. She's here with us today to talk about a very special reason why she had to go to the White House just a couple of weeks ago, having to do with inclusion. And so Elaine's going to share the whole story with us about what it was like at the White House and what they were able to accomplish and what they talked about. But I want to remind you before we start anything that this entire show is meant to be interactive. We want you to be a part of the conversation. So Kelby's going to show you some of the different ways that you can participate. He's going to show you some of the ways you can watch the show and some of the ways that you can have your voice be heard. While he does that, I want to remind you that our homepage is autism-live.com. And when you go there, there's many different things that you can do. You can click on the triangle that's on the computer screen. That will allow you to watch the live show or the most recently recorded live show. Now, up in the corner, the left-hand corner of that screen, there is a little button that looks like a memo. If you click on that, that gives you access to a library of the 100 most recent shows recorded. You can click on those, watch those, push rewind, pause, fast forward, whatever you'd like to do. If you want to go further back in the archives, please check out, we have podcasted. It's a free download on iTunes and Stitcher. And of course, we have our YouTube channel where everything is easily accessible and again, free. Now to the side of the computer screen on our homepage, you'll find the live feature. That is live 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. You can just put your cursor in the box that says your question, start typing, hit enter. You don't have to log in. There is no username. There is no password. It's completely anonymous. We do encourage you to be as specific as possible about what you're writing about, especially if you're writing about something that you're seeing on the show. Let us know who it is that you are watching. You don't even have to put the date, but if you say, I saw when Dr. Granpeesheh was talking about this and I want to know more about this, that gives me great information. And if you're looking for help or resources, please let us know what the biggest major city is that you live close to so we can give you the best possible advice. Or information even, don't want to say advice. In any case, my friends, it is time now for Ask Dr. Doreen.
Dr. Doreen Granpeesheh is the
Dr. Doreen is an expert in autism.
Doreen Granpeesheh.
Dr. Granpeesheh.
Dr. Doreen Granpeesheh.
Dr. Doreen Granpeesheh is a visionary in the field of autism. Now you can ask her questions on Ask Dr. Doreen. Welcome to Ask Dr. Doreen. We welcome Dr. Doreen Granpeesheh.
Good morning.
You look very springy in your purple.
It's the lilac color.
Lovely to have you.
Thank you.
Lilac, that's the right color. We welcome you back to the show. We missed you so much last week, but I know you had some really important things to do. And I want to remind, if there's anybody who's watching us for the first time, that Dr. Doreen Granpeesheh is a true expert in the field of autism. She's been working in this field for 30 plus years. I'm always astounded by that because you couldn't possibly, if we look at your skin, we wouldn't think that was possible. But It's an important thing to talk about because you have helped so many people on the spectrum and so many families on the spectrum during that time. And I always like to remind everybody that you're truly a visionary in this
Thank you
field.
very much,
Having
yeah.
had so much experience, you see what's coming and you help us. So we appreciate you being here for this hour with all of us answering questions. But we do want to always caution people that there is no expert in this field or any field that could give individual specific advice in this format.
Right.
So that isn't what the goal is here. But when you write in and ask questions, what you get to do is take a tour of Dr. Granpeesheh's brain. She gets to give you information that she has that will help you to make decisions down the road and help you to get the help and support that you need.
Yeah,
It's
just guidance more than anything else.
so fascinating. We learned so much, and so we thank you so much for your time.
It's always a pleasure.
I want to launch into a rather lengthy question, but I want to cover a lot of this because it's I love that this person wrote in. They said, "Hello, I'm a faithful listener to Autism Live, and I'm so grateful for the incredible amount of useful information and resources that you provide for families and professionals." They go on to say, "I am a pre-K intensive teacher."
That's
so this is
lovely.
why I love this, right? That works specifically with 3 to 4 year old severely autistic students. I have a student who's 3 years old, nonverbal, non-responsive to commands or directions, problems with speech and language, prefers to be alone, and needs maximum prompting to do simple tasks such as lift a spoon to his mouth, pick up a marker, follow along in the hallway, or play with toys appropriately. The one thing he does do consistently and constantly is self-stimulation. He wears a diaper and pulls his penis above his diaper and is constantly touching himself or pulling on his penis. His mother puts long shirts on him so that it's not so obvious all the time. This does provide him modesty, but it also hides his hand as he is self-stimulating. He does this action at any given opportunity. I have noticed that he seems to suffer extreme anxiety in the classroom, almost to the point where he acts like a zombie. It is extremely difficult to get his attention and focus. He will put his hands in front of his face as if to block the sensory input, and they tremor in front of his face. How I have managed this is that I will pull his diaper up, place his penis back inside, and pull his pants tighter. Because he's already so anxious, I'm not trying to make him feel more anxious by reprimanding him over an action that clearly is bringing him some level of comfort. During nap time, he will lay on his stomach and hump the mattress and breathe heavily. He does not like to nap and will resist heavily laying down and relaxing. I'm sure the self-stimulating behavior is in preference to sleeping. I'm going to make the assumption based on his actions that he is rubbing his penis against his diaper and is self-stimulating either to relax himself, entertain himself, or in preference as opposed to sleeping. I have spoken to the parents about this, and they are well aware of his self-stimulating behavior. They say when he gets home, the first thing he does is take off his clothes and walks around the house with his hand on his penis constantly. They do little to stop the behavior. Some of this is cultural, also because they come from a warm climate, third world country where it is normal for young children to be nude or semi-nude. The parents are not very knowledgeable about autism or behavior therapy and are not resistant to it, but are not very proactive about it either. My dilemma is how to manage this behavior more effectively in the classroom and not add to his anxiety. I wonder if it is a losing battle since the parents do little to curb the behavior at home. And she wrote, help.
What a wonderful person.
Exactly.
You're a fantastic teacher to care so much about this child. I have lots and lots of comments about this, so I'll try to go back and I tried to mark as you were reading, but there's a lot to give feedback on. So your hands are a little bit tied because if parents are not on board, parents play such an important role in anything that you do. Obviously, you have him for somewhere around 30 hours a week, which is quite a lot in school, but having said that, it's really important for parents to get on board with this as well. Now, you can still make a difference. You can change things in the school environment. It'll just be a little bit tougher because he'll have a very strong contrast to what he's allowed to do at home and what he's allowed to do at school. My feeling about the whole thing is that it doesn't really matter what country he's from or what the cultural background is. The fact is that he now lives in this country, and so we have a set of rules and guidelines that we have to adhere to in this country. It just is. You know, if we all lived in a nudist colony, it would be perfectly fine and we'd have different criteria for him, but we don't. We live in this society and it's important for him to fit into this society, which is why I would, you know, you're a teacher and I don't know how much ability you have to try to modify the behavior at home, but I would really recommend that you do have a conversation with parents and that you try to get a supervisor, BCBA, or someone who's a behavior analyst, have a deeper conversation with parents. It's very important. The concept is he may be doing these things 3 now, and he's, you know, it's not such a big deal. It is already to me a big deal, but it might not be a huge deal to the family right now. Obviously, it's a big deal already to you. And so imagine if this behavior continues and he becomes 7, 8, 10, 15, you know, how inappropriate would it be then for a 15-year-old to be running around naked playing with himself? So the sooner we get on this behavior, the better it is. So that's number one. That's the first thing, is that you have a very reasonable request, and I think it's a very appropriate thing to deal with, and we need to deal with it now. And ideally, you'd want to deal with it in all environments. Now, secondarily, let's talk about the anxiety and how this affects the anxiety or not. It doesn't really matter. It may reduce his anxiety. When I do a lecture on anxiety, I always talk about that we all have a lot of different things that we do to reduce our anxiety. Some of them are healthy and some of them are not healthy. For example, we may sometimes people get very anxious and they'll overeat. That's not a good thing.
Pick me.
Oh, okay.
I'm familiar with that one.
So that's not a you know, healthy coping mechanism. Others may, in anxiety, just go and shop like crazy, or others may, in anxiety, drink more, or whatever it is. These are not good coping mechanisms. So, and as a whole, they're not acceptable because they harm you, even though they might be what I call short-term solution. In the long run, it's harmful to the individual. Another very good example that we experience all the time is when parents allow their children to sleep with them when they're very young, and this behavior continues because the child comes in, cries, and battles and so on in the middle of the night, and nobody really wants to deal with it. Or sometimes it's just because the parent feels worried or anxious. It's all the things that we let our kids do once we say, oh, the child has diagnosis of autism. We just say, oh, maybe I should just embrace him and spoil him and let him do all these things because he has autism. And it's the same thing. It's kind of like it's reducing our own initial anxiety because we feel like we're doing something about it, but in reality, we're harming the child long term. So it doesn't matter if this behavior is producing some form of relaxation for him. The reason it doesn't matter is that it is an inappropriate out. It's an inappropriate solution to the problem. So let's assume that he has, which clearly from what you're telling me is, he really has a very significant amount of anxiety where it's showing that he'll cover his eyes and he'll be shaking. Having said that, it could also just be avoidance. I don't want any demands placed on me, and so just leave me alone. But regardless, let's assume the child has a lot of anxiety about being in school or other scenarios. We need to give him a more appropriate way of handling the anxiety. So number one, we need to get rid of this behavior that he has currently right now. And number two, we have to, as we do that, we have to remember to give him some other form of behavior that can help calm him during anxiety, moments of anxiety. Now, let's talk about the second one first, then we'll talk about different things we can do to intervene here. Teaching a child techniques that will help them with anxiety, there's a lot of different things, and it really differs by child. So often what we do is we'll produce a very cozy, comfortable corner. You'll need to get a very large beanbag that you put in a corner for the child, perhaps give the child headphones noise canceling headphones preferably. Identify some type of auditory music or story or something that he likes to listen to that is calming. You can also find books, something on a computer for perhaps programs or games, things like that. With children, most of the time, you can certainly teach him. He's very young. You could certainly teach him just breathing exercises. So that's just like, as soon as you see him getting anxious, you will sit down and have him model like, and you'll count for him deep breaths, and that automatically will reduce anyone's anxiety. But with children, most of the time, the way they self-regulate is distraction rather than relaxation. They don't get into relaxation until a little bit later in life. Their anxiety does dissipate if they're able to distract, and the way to distract is with things like putting on a set of headphones, listening to something, or watching something, and that will definitely distract him from anxiety. That would be an appropriate way. Running, any kind of exercise, jumping on a trampoline, that sort of thing tends to also redirect anxiety. It just puts you in a different mode when your heart rate is higher. So there's a lot of other things. He's very young. Later on, I mean, if he's a little bit older, you can teach the child various tapping techniques and things that are distracting for anxiety. Now, but playing with himself is not an appropriate thing. So let's talk about how to get rid of this behavior. You know, the easiest thing that you could do is the combination of two things. One is that you basically, and a lot of it is just going to be antecedent control. So you're not going to be punishing him when he does this. You're going to be trying to block this behavior and immediately replace it with something that's incompatible with this behavior. So the way to do that is, there's two ideas I have right now. One is, when you, first of all, ask the parents to buy him like 5 sets of overalls. Okay, so not pants, but overalls, so that he actually can't physically touch himself. He may be able to over the overalls, but he won't be able to pull his penis out and actually start to play with it. So that would be important. And once he has overalls on, obviously we're helping him where he's not able to access. I don't want to forget that there's something else I want to say at the end too. But so that's one thing, is to block it at all times so that there's no contact. Now, it'd be very important that parents also have him in overalls at home or onesies at home.
I was just going to say, for some kids are clever with overalls and they can get both hands in through
Into
the
the
sides.
side, yes.
But they have coveralls that even for little kids that, you know, zip up or button up, that gets rid of that too. So depending on how he does, yeah.
Absolutely. And at home, of course, they could use onesies that are like more like pajamas. Now, in addition to that, as soon as you see his hands approaching the area, you want to block it. In other words, you'll go immediately up to him, get in his face and say, no, let's do something else. And you give him an object. Because if his hands are busy with an object, obviously he's not able to do that behavior. So his hands need to be occupied. In fact, if you want to, you can, across all time frames, you could have him hold an object. So you could have, perhaps you look and see what situations there's a higher rate of this behavior occurring. Is it throughout the day? Is it an equal amount throughout the day? Is it in certain scenarios? Is it when demands are placed? Figure out the time frames that it's happening more, and you will have him perhaps hold on to a laptop or an iPad or a notepad with a drawing or a pen or some sort of like a toy or item that will otherwise distract him, which, by the way, a lot of those types of like koosh balls or things like that are stress balls, those types of things will also give the child a sensory type of reaction, and they like that, and often kids will use those things much more. So essentially what I'm saying is, give him something that he likes to fidget with, and that will be something that'll distract him. Make sure that you're able to take the item away when you're actually teaching him so that he's able to focus and pay attention. So what you're doing is you're preventing it, and you are now giving him an object to just keep him busy. Now, the component that needs to come into place is you have to reinforce him, and I would reinforce him on the contingency that the behavior is not occurring within certain durations of time. So essentially you would time, let's say, you would look at it and say, right now, he's doing this behavior on the average approximately 5 times an hour, whatever it is. You time it and you observe him during the course of the day, and you say it happens, and then the next time it happens, and you get the duration, the frequency of amount of times he does it in a certain duration of time. You get that, and that's your baseline, and now anything better than that you reinforce. So let's say it happens like every 10 minutes. If it occurs every 10 minutes, what you're trying to reinforce him now for is not doing it every 10 minutes. Okay. So what you look at is, you put a timer, and if he's able to not do it for 10 minutes, you give him a major reward, whatever it is that he finds reinforcing. And you just do that for a while, and then, like, let's say the next week you'll make it every 11 minutes. And you do a very gradual increase. If he does during the 10-minute period and you have to redirect and block, then he just doesn't get the reinforcer for that period of time, and you reset the clock and you do another 10 minutes. So your goal is always to increase that baseline of not touching himself from 10 minutes up, from whatever his baseline is.
If you find that he keeps doing something before you get to the reinforcement, can you pull it back to 8 minutes?
Exactly.
So that he sees what it's like when it does,
exactly.
when it doesn't happen.
So you reduce the duration. It really, that's why it's so important to get the baseline right now. So you get that in place and you figure that out, and then you will be reinforcing him very frequently for not doing this behavior. And then other than that, the only other big thing I want to mention here is that he's 3, he should be potty trained. So you mentioned that he's in diapers. A part of this could just be the sensation of the diaper as well. And it would be important to get in an ABA group in there to help potty train him, because that is an important thing. It might just change things for him.
Amazing. And so interesting, and I want to encourage you to write back in if you want clarification on anything, or as it goes along, if you hit a stumbling point where you need some more support,
please do.
Please write back in.
Yeah, and one other last thing is that a lot of times parents will actually, this is not something, you're not the first one to bring this up, because if not to this level, a lot of little boys will often like fall on the floor and start rubbing themselves and so on, and that's sort of a self-stimulatory behavior. And what you do is, it's very simple. It's a pleasurable experience that they've figured out and they want to do it, and they don't realize that it is inappropriate. So in his case and any other child's case, the behavior can be allowed in privacy at small amounts during the day. In other words, you would limit it and say, you can do this behavior, give it a name. Only at night when you're in your bed before you sleep, and you allow that, and outside of that, it's just not allowed.
I want to go back briefly on something that you said, because it just struck a chord with me. The whole idea that I talk a lot in parent groups about how we get used to a new normal as parents, that we, even though if you had asked us 10 years before if this was acceptable, we would have said no. Right. When our child is diagnosed with autism, we get into a mode of, he's clearly so anxious and I don't know exactly what to do, so this is my new normal, that my child can do X, Y, Z, and we sort of accept it. Almost like we're in a relationship with a bad alcoholic. This is just our new normal,
it's so
right?
True. So true.
And I really heard when you said, just because he's having anxiety about this doesn't mean we don't treat it.
Yeah.
We don't. That doesn't mean that we completely ignore the anxiety. And you gave strategies for the anxiety, but the excuse of, well, when we change this, it gives him anxiety. That's not enough of an excuse to not target something and see improvement with it.
Absolutely.
I want everybody to hear that, because I needed to hear that today.
Yeah, it's very important. And if you think about it with yourself too, it's the same thing. It's like we might have stressful days, or I know I do this. I'm like, okay, my thing during Lent every year is not to eat after a certain time, like after 7 p.m. I don't eat at all, or 6 p.m. And it's hard. You don't realize how hard it is. And sometimes you're exhausted and you go home and you don't have time and it's late and you're like, oh, I'm too tired to do this to myself. Yeah. So you make excuses for yourself, and the fact of the matter is there is no excuse. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if it calms him. It doesn't matter what kind of stimulation. It is not accepted by society. And all things for our kids, like all of our kids, no matter what level of, that's why I always say, make the environment less stressful so that you can impose these strict guidelines on the child. Like if it's a child who's extremely hypersensory, then make sure he's not exposed to heavy lighting or sounds or whatever it is, because at that point it's not fair to expect him to not do things that are inappropriate.
Right.
And once you're able to actually like make sure the child's in a good place, then you can absolutely impose the same rules.
But that means we have to be willing to deal with the anxiety.
Totally.
It
Or,
means that
or
we have
any
to,
reaction.
Right. It means that we have to be willing to follow through with the intervention. And it also means we have to deal with our own anxiety.
But so true, Shannon. And so like it's, the more we talk about this, it's more comes to me from you. Like, why would we assume that the child with autism has more anxiety than any other child? Any other child, right? So any other child is going through the same circumstances, but yet we think, oh, if I stop my child, he's going to have anxiety. What about any other child?
Yeah.
Every other child has anxiety when they go to school. Every other child has anxiety about new friends. But we expect from them and we teach them coping mechanisms.
Yeah.
Same thing with our kids. And I always say this to parents, if you expect your child to fit in or to become normal or to behave like other kids, the contingencies have to be the same. And often I get on your case and I say, stop doing stuff for Jem, because
and it's important that you do that.
no, but I mean, it's just the more
it.
we do,
And it's needed.
Well, he's actually gotten to a point now where he tells you not to do stuff for him.
Yeah.
But some of the stuff he tells you and some of the stuff he just enjoys.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it's the same with me. I do too much for my kids as well. And you look back at it and you're like, okay, ultimately I need to just step back and let them fail.
And we
sometimes.
call it love when we do too much. I'm emotional because one of the examples that I'm thinking about is that, I know the anxiety that Nancy had about how was Wyatt going to deal with losing his father.
Yes.
I mean, and that was her biggest concern.
It's amazing.
And yet, Wyatt has been amazing. And I thank everybody for your thoughts and prayers on that. Wyatt has been amazing. And you and I were at the service for Reed on Saturday, and Wyatt was taking care of other people. I don't think any of us could have predicted. Maybe you could have predicted, but it was a beautiful
could not
thing
have
to
predicted. I was really amazed at how serene he was, and actually that he also expressed himself by simply saying he's frustrated with the situation about his father.
Absolutely.
But the amazing, there's so much to be said about this, and thank you for coming into this, because I can also share for a moment, and I haven't yet on this issue, is that first of all, the incredibleness of this entire family came through on this incredibly beautiful funeral. Nancy being such an amazing person that all she's concerned about is how does Wyatt deal with it, not how do I deal with it. But and Wyatt has taken on these qualities from both parents in the sense that he's able to handle these things, and also just Reed was such an incredible human being, and I was so honored to be able to be there and to kind of celebrate his life, because he truly was just a joyful, wonderful man. And it was a very emotional funeral, and it was just an incredible experience. And by the way, good job to you and Kelby, because those videos that you made were incredible. I'm sure you saw me. I was sitting in front of you crying.
Oh, I was so busy trying to keep the ugly cry at bay.
Oh my gosh.
And my child was emotional, which was a beautiful, beautiful thing for me. He was so emotional. And I was so happy for him that he was so emotional. And when I asked him afterwards, he was very choked up during the service and afterwards. And then he was able to get it all together. After they did the ashes, he, got it together. And on the way home, I said to him, what made you emotional? And he said, well, we were there in the church, and he said, and it reminded, my mother passed away, 3 years ago, and he said, it reminded me of when Grandma died. And he said, and that made me emotional, right? And then he said, and then I started thinking about how I felt when Grandma died, and thinking about Wyatt and the fact that he lost his dad and what that must feel like for Wyatt, and how I would feel if it was my dad. And I was just like, ladies and gentlemen,
Talk about perspective taking.
Yeah, like he's there. He got the whole thing. He experienced all of the thoughts and emotions that are appropriate, and I was so proud of him and reinforced him and said, that's so great. And do you see how you had all those feelings and it felt uncomfortable, but you didn't die, and it was appropriate.
You
it was
got through it.
And I said to Nancy yesterday when I had an opportunity to talk to her, I said, what a beautiful service, and she spoke, and there were several other speakers that were amazing. It was
I mean, it's a weird thing to say, but it was the best funeral I have ever been to in my life. It was an incredible, the whole thing was unbelievable.
Yeah. And that was Nancy and Reed, because they
Yes.
planned it together. This is how adult they were. In the last few weeks, they spent a great deal of time with their pastor and planned this together, which I said, my goodness, you know, how adult can you possibly be? But I said to Nancy, it was a privilege to be there. It was a privilege to be there.
It was a privilege to be there. Truly
it was.
was.
Really, really wonderful. All right, I have to mop down. We're going to take a break, and then we're going to come back with more of your questions for Dr. Granpeesheh, so stick with us.
It's every parent's desire for their child to have a great start in life. Yet there is a condition affecting more children's lives than pediatric cancer, diabetes, and AIDS combined. Autism strikes 1 in every 150 children.
Today, 1 in 110 kids in the U.S. will be diagnosed with autism. That is a huge jump from 30 years ago when it was 1 in 30,000.
Startling new report finds the number of children with autism is skyrocketing. The Centers for Disease Control estimates 1 in 68 children has a form of autism. Now that's a 30% increase in just 2 years.
Well, a lot of the children and all the accomplishments over the last 20 years, I'm thrilled.
I think what kept me was the feeling that, you know, I would have a parent come to my office late at night at UCLA and just fall apart. And this is a long time ago, and there were much less back then in terms of services and knowledge and so on. And I would just sit with the family and the parents and walk them through and try to take away some of their fears, you know. And at that point I realized, I think the thing that's actually most important to me is that process. I mean, thank God that I've been very, very lucky and blessed to have so many incredible clinicians join me along the way and just develop CARD in such an amazing, magnificent way. That I could, you know, for me it was more really about how can I help the families? What can I do for the moms, the dads, you know? It is just, and I feel like, you know, there's no way I would ever really know because I haven't had my own child go through this, but I've experienced it with people a lot of times.
Hi, this is Megan. I'm in first grade all by myself. My teachers are so fabulous. I like to read books. I like to go to my friends' birthday parties. I like to invite my friends to my birthday parties. I once had a sleepover with a friend. I like to have play dates with my friend. I'm the best reader in my class. I like to go to the library. I like to read different series of books. And here's how I learned to do all these things. By my card friends and Dr. Granpeesheh. Thank you, card friends and Dr. Granpeesheh.
Welcome back to Autism Live and to Ask Dr. Doreen. We're here with Dr. Doreen Granpeesheh. She's answering your questions in real time. I want to move on to the next question. My son is autistic, 5 years old. He has few words here and there, but he is not verbal yet. Will he ever talk? I am very lost, but I have hopes.
Must be so scary for parents. Yes, obviously I can't answer this question because I know very, very little about your child. I have had 5-year-olds who started therapy at 5 who were nonverbal and recovered. So I can tell you that. I know a lot of children who are nonverbal until 4 or 5, just because they haven't had intervention. So I don't know if he's had any ABA, but before it gets too long, like today, you need to start figuring out a way for him to get some intensive ABA. It depends on where he's at right now. Being able to verbalize is not the only thing. A lot of times children won't verbalize, but they're highly, highly intelligent and capable, and they're trying to communicate in other ways. So it's just an important thing for you to get an assessment. Maybe you can write back in and tell us what you've done so far, or what his placement is, where is he, what kind of services does he get, and tell us a little bit about him, like, what are his skills, how does he communicate his needs, what does he like to do on his free time. Those types of things would help me a little bit better guide you.
Okay, and wonderful. And I love that you said, sometimes we have to adjust our thinking about what steps and what's important. It's yes. a hard thing
yes.
to say, and no one would ever tell you to let go of the wish for your child to talk, because that'd be impossible, right?
Right.
But in the realm of things, you want to get that functional communication going as soon as possible, because your whole world will change when that happens. And we know statistically that if you get the functional communication on board, your child is more likely to talk.
Oh yeah, there's no question about that. Absolutely, I totally agree. I mean, talking and verbalizing in any way, or even communicating via an augmentative device or sign or PECS or whatever, will only develop when the child has figured out that it's useful. So it has to be functional in the sense that, language, to us it comes naturally, but to many of our children it comes to them when they figure out that it's useful, it meets their needs. So it has to be functional before we do anything about it. Now, so that's definitely. A lot of times, though, parents just think that having language is the only thing they want, and it really isn't, because sometimes your child will develop a certain level of communication later on, and it's adequate, it's enough. What you really are looking for is being able to express yourself, for the child to be able to express themselves somehow, whether it's verbal or nonverbal, doesn't matter, but it's important for them to be able to express themselves so that they don't start to develop other behaviors that can be harmful to others and to society and to themselves. Aggression often forms when we can't express ourselves and we become frustrated. Any kind of aggressive behavior or tantruming, a tantrum really is the child just saying, I'm upset that I can't have this object, or I'm upset that I have to stop doing this activity, or I'm mad at you because you said no, or whatever it is, or you're making me work too hard. Tantrum and aggression or any kind of challenging behavior is really all about just expressing frustration. So being able to express frustration in some other more appropriate way, vocally or non-vocally, through an aug device or a visual program, is really important, because it gets our kids to be less frustrated, it gets them to express themselves, it gets them to not act out in society, to be more part of society.
And I want to piggyback on this, because we had another question come in that I think is from another viewer, but my son is 5-year-old, has limited speech, but improved in the last year where he was completely nonverbal. He's receiving 10 hours of home ABA service since he was 4. We are going to move him from public school to card very soon. Can I still expect my son to recover, catch his peers, as he is already 5 years old? Kind of goes hand in hand, but this person is making the decision to say, okay, I'm not doing public school anymore. I'm going to go to the creme de la creme and put my child with card, which I think is the best possible circumstance you could give that child.
It is a fabulous situation, and I'm assuming you're in one of the areas where we have a school, an academy, and he's joining our academy. I'm not sure, but it's important to review this, because we review these research findings often with our staff and with our families, and it's really important to discuss these for a minute if we can, Shannon, because In the last month or so, we've submitted for publication a few studies that are, I think, really change the face of ABA to some extent. There's several studies that we've done. You know, one study, and it's great that your child's making progress with 10 hours. Let me start there. Because if a child makes progress with 10 hours, that tells me that they're like a sponge, really needing ABA, that ABA is their language and it will work for him. Now, multiply that by 4, he'll be learning way more if he gets 40 hours. Now, on that subject, I also want to go back and say, it's funny because I think I mentioned this last time that we were talking about, we're writing a standards paper, and I was looking and thinking, where did 40 hours come from? And we realized, and I was saying, you know, Ivar Lovas used to always say it's just the child's waking hours. So we're supposed to be doing these interventions with a child from the time he wakes up to the time he sleeps all day long, every day. And the 40 hours was not meant to be including everything. The 40 hours was supposed to be only the hours that the parent is not with the child. So they're working, for instance, and that we are able to cover the child. So in reality, 40 hours is not, it should be, now it's like the upper limit and no one ever does anything above 40 hours. Whereas in reality, 40 hours should be the lower limit, you know, and it shouldn't really, to be honest, include school unless the school is doing a full-on ABA type program, and a lot of schools are not. So in reality, the 40 hours should be on top of school, and it should be, you know, every waking hour should be therapy, which is why it's so important for parents to be trained. And we were training parents all the way back into the 70s. It's important for parents to continue this when therapists are not there. That aside, so that's one thing we've discovered, is that all variables, everything you can imagine, the child's age, the child's illnesses, other medical illnesses, the child's diet, amount of sleep, who the therapists are, who the supervisor is, what is the content, nothing, all those things put together do not equate to one factor alone in terms of how your child does, and that one factor alone is just hours. It is just hours. So I can't express how important that is. I keep saying this because parents really feel that if they do 10 hours, it's something, it's good, 15 is better, 20 is better. Yes, to some extent that might be the case, but you might be missing the mark. And that is, it's your child's life, and I don't want to put more pressure on parents, obviously, but these types of things only ever change from the parents, you know, parents pushing. And please, as a parent, if you're watching, please don't allow this field to be watered down. 10 hours is not the recommended dose of ABA. 40 is the minimal dose of ABA that is effective. We've done these studies over and over and over, and it is important to be doing more hours rather than less hours because your children need this. It's the single factor that has the highest relationship to positive outcome. So the more hours, the more likely your child will do well. Now, our other study that we recently have submitted for publication is that it showed that if you are receiving services in a controlled environment, in a center, in a clinic where there are supervisors present, where there's staff always available, and there's groups of other children receiving similar services, your child does a lot better, up to 85% better, in fact. Parents often now ask me, why is that? And I just have to guess why that is, because we didn't look at why it is. We just contrasted kids who were receiving in center to kids who were receiving in home. And we also contrasted kids who were receiving services in both environments. And we saw that in all cases, the children are doing way, way more learning, 85%, 80 to 85% more learning when it's at a center. And so, you know, I think if I want to think why that is, I think it's because the supervisor is there, because you're more focused, there's much less time wasted, it's much more efficient, and so on. So if it was me, I would definitely fight for my child to get the best, which is more hours, and at a center. Those two factors are very, very important. Today I was announcing to our staff some research that we also looked at, and it does actually make a difference if you have a supervisor who's board certified. I think it was pretty high amount. It was 70-something% more learning when the supervisor is a BCBA versus not a BCBA. So that's it's a strong compliment to the BACB in terms of having regulated our field well. Good for them. Honestly, kudos, because what a great job to produce a credential and then have all these universities adhere to a set of learning principles that produce really qualified people. So I think that's a fantastic finding as well.
Absolutely.
These are important things. It's just important for us to not forget that all of our kids have a lot of capabilities, and their chances to recover or catch up with their peers increases exponentially with every hour of therapy. And again, if it's center-based, if you have a supervisor who's board certified, if you are following a curriculum, that's good. If you have dealt with other issues for the child, like if the child's not sleeping, help them with that. If the child has medical illnesses, help them with that. All of these factors contribute to the well-being of our kids.
Yeah, people will tell you that there's a lot about autism we don't know, and that's true, but we do know what the prescription is. It's not easy to follow the prescription, but it's important to follow it. Having said that, I think we should take a short break, and then we're going to come back and do a speed round, because so many questions have come in the last hour that my breath is shallow.
Absolutely.
All right, we're back with more Ask Dr. Doreen after these messages.
Hello, fellow activists. In our last segment, we talked about step number 2, educate yourself. Step number 3 is get support. Now, any journey can feel overwhelming if you feel like you're walking it alone. Well, you're far from alone, because with 1 in 50 kids diagnosed with autism today, there are a lot of us out there. Of course, there's always the issue of financial support. Now, there's a handful of organizations out there that offer financial support to families in need. ACT Today, or Autism Care and Treatment Today, is one of them. Visit our website at www.act-today.org to find out more about our grant process. I want to talk about a different kind of support today, emotional support. Now, you can get that from other travelers on this path. Some of the best advice I've ever received is from the moms of other kids with autism who went to school with Wyatt or were involved with programs with him. Then there are the pioneers. These are the families that have gone through this years ago, and there was very little information out there. All of these people seem to have the desire to pay it forward. Now, one of them, Lisa Ackerman, who is one of my mentors, started an organization called TACA, Talk About Curing Autism. She actually took the concept of mentors and support groups and made it available to everybody. You can go to their website, talkaboutcuringautism.org, to find out more. During the first and most difficult year after Wyatt's diagnosis, I wrote an email to close family and friends, letting them know what was going on and the challenges our family was facing and why we dropped out of sight. I was amazed at the outpouring of love and affection and all the help I received from that email. First, you have to be vulnerable. You can't be afraid to ask. Try this out. Could you cook me a meal? Are you going to the market? Can you pick me up a few things? Could your kids play with my kid and make them feel included? Or can you come over and clean my house? Well, maybe not that last one, except with your best friend. And maybe the best support of all is having someone that listens, and that doesn't cost a dime. So until next time, surround yourself with the loving kindness of others and keep the faith.
Welcome back to Autism Live. I'm here with Dr. Doreen Granpeesheh for a segment that we call Ask Dr. Doreen, and I was saying to her during the break, we've had so many people writing in during this hour that it makes my breath shallow. I'm like, oh, we're not going to get to all these questions. So we're gonna hit some of these really hard. Okay, here's a question. Where can I find help for myself as an autistic adult? Wow. I went to the County Development Disabilities, and they told me I was too high functioning for them to help me. This is a sad, sad tale that we hear a lot. Mm-hmm. They referred me to a place that doesn't treat autism, just addiction and mental illness. It seems that all of this help for autistic people is explicitly for children. And I know that it seems that way, but that isn't the entire truth. It's just that there isn't as much for adults. So what would you like to say, Dr. Granpeesheh?
Oh gosh. Okay, so these are my thoughts on this. There's a lot of different things about this. One is, the county developmental disabilities is not the best place to start. For you, what I think you should do is you need to find a psychologist who is somewhat experienced in autism. So that would be someone like me. Because you need to start with someone who can identify a diagnosis, for lack of a better word, because without that diagnosis, it is unclear where you're going to get assistance or what type of assistance you're going to get. Now, the diagnosis may be ASD, very, very low severity, or it may be sub-factors of ASD. So don't forget that autism kind of is it's a conglomeration of a series of symptoms. Like, for instance, you must have the social deficit and the language deficit and sort of like a repetitive behaviors, and you have to have X number of symptoms in each area and so on. But in reality, you might have one or the other. Now, in the past, we used to say kind of if you just have a lot of the social issues, then it's more Asperger's, or it could be PDD. It depends. But right now, what I'm saying is, let's look at you have to find someone who's a psychologist who can kind of just meet with you, chat with you, and see what your diagnosis could be. Like, you could just have a social problem or a deficit in social skills, and that's its own diagnosis. And then from there, it helps to identify the treatment that would be beneficial for you. I can tell you that if you're this functional and this high functioning, you're not really looking at, to some extent, you will be having some ABA techniques, but it's more cognitive behavioral therapy that you're looking for, because cognitive behavioral therapy is when the psychologist or the behavior analyst gives the person a series of techniques to practice in their own mind and in their own lives. And these techniques are often behavioral techniques, but the reason we call it cognitive behavioral therapy is sort of you internalize it, you take it home and you practice these things, and you do homework, you write these things out for yourselves, how to improve and so on. We all practice a little bit of cognitive behavioral therapy in our lives. We all practice a little bit of ABA in our lives. But it's in your case, it sounds like you would need someone to help structure that for you. And so really, the only thing I can tell you is I don't know where you are, but you would need to find a psychologist who can help assess and diagnose and give you a clearer picture of what the issues are, and where you need help and what type of help you need.
And I just want to say, if you didn't catch last week's Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy, we had Emily Island and her son, who's an adult on the autism spectrum, Tom Island. He's a CPA who's now a speaker and speaks all over the country about autism. And one of the questions that we asked was, what really helped you? Tom wasn't diagnosed until he was a teenager. And he said, personally for him, that cognitive behavioral therapy was one of the things that helped him the most. So you can watch that interview. It was during Let's Talk Autism last week, and there's a clip of it that says what therapies worked. Tom Island and Emily Island, what therapies worked, to hear him talking about that. Okay, moving right along. Okay, dear Shannon and Dr. Doreen, my son's school thinks he is ready to have his one-on-one aid at school start to fade out. He's in first grade. I'm not sure, since he still has behavior incidences at recess and gym with not regulating his emotions. What data should I ask for to show me he's ready to have less support? Should his IEP change? And she said, excuse me, thanks for your help. I'm excited for him, but also a little nervous too.
Yes, absolutely. How old is he?
He is, she did not say. He's in first grade.
First grade. It's a little early for first grade in my mind. I very rarely would have faded out a shadow in first grade. Usually it's closer to the end of first grade or even second grade. So I think what you're looking for is, if you have a provider, if you have a behavior analyst who's working with your child, or you have an ABA program and someone who oversees that, I think it's their decision. They would have to come and do an observation. If it was me, this is what I would do. I would send an unknown person to the school, so someone that my child doesn't recognize, who can do a very good evaluation or assessment of how my child is doing in every section of the day. Sometimes our kids do really well when they're regulated in the classroom, but not so well during recess. Like, it's important to make sure your child is doing great during that time frame. Then I would fade the shadow. If I felt my child is doing really well, I would fade the shadow from all very regulated areas first, so classroom settings where the child is doing really well, and then from social settings, where often our kids need a little bit more support, and I would do that over the course of a year. I would do it very slowly. So please watch for that. You know, you're looking for, obviously, the child being able to express themselves, follow all of the instructions of the teacher well. You're looking to make sure the child never feels lost in those settings, that they're academically keeping up, they're learning about the same pace as everyone else. You're looking to make sure that your child enjoys going to school, you know, is happy to be there, has friends. During free times, you're looking for really not being able to tell the difference. If the child is interacting with other kids, they should be about the same level of interaction as the other kids, same level of verbal interaction, nonverbal interaction, so on and so forth. So a lot of that sort of stuff is what you're looking for, but I would recommend that you get a professional to go in and observe. A lot of times the decision is influenced by, and I don't want to say in this case, sometimes it's influenced by financial reasons, where the school feels that the sooner we can cut this aid, the less we have to pay for this case. And that shouldn't be a valid reason. So, you know, make sure you have a kind of objective outsider take a look at the situation.
And I want to throw something else in too that I didn't know that I could ask for at this age, but since you brought up that he's having issues at recess and gym,
yes,
you have the right at your IEP to ask for an evaluation for a recreational aid. Didn't even know that such an animal existed, but it's a fabulous, fabulous thing. Somebody who comes in who's ingenious about just taking care of not just your child, but teaching the other children how to facilitate play as well.
Absolutely.
What a difference that made for my child. Didn't even know that I could ask for that. Skills is what I came in and said, here are the goals that I printed out from skills that are appropriate for him that I want added, and they went, oh, this looks like he might need an assessment from a recreational aid, and I went, beg pardon? But it turned everything around. So I owe all of that to skills and just sharing that with you as well. I'm going to be responsible. I want to ask you one more question.
Of course.
But I'm going to be responsible and let you go, because I know I always go over and take your time, and I don't want to do that, and I know you have meetings. But I'm going to apologize to everybody whose questions we didn't get to. We covered a lot of important stuff, and I hope that that was helpful to you, and we'll get to more questions next week. And we want to thank Dr. Granpeesheh for being here.
It's a pleasure. Thank you.
And helping us and giving us hope and information. Want to remind you, we're going to take a break now and go to the A word. When we come back, it's time for Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy. We don't have Nancy, unfortunately, and thank you. Many of you wrote in and said hugs to Nancy and Wyatt. I will forward those to her. But what we do have today, which I'm very excited, Elaine Hall from the Miracle Project is here. And she's going to be talking with us about her recent trip to the White House, why she was there and what they accomplished. So first, here is the A word.
I just wanted to ask you how you're adjusting with all these people coming in and out of the home.
You know, half of me is used to it. Half of me is no longer freaking out about how clean my house is, clearly. The other half of me is still really overwhelmed. And, you know, if there's talk of one more thing that we add to our list for that week, sort of freaks me out, at least initially.
Well, it's easier now. It was very strange the first week. He's making progress. It's sort of relentless. When you think you have a moment to relax, oh, wait a minute, 9:30, so-and-so is showing up. But it's just an adjustment. It's not overwhelming necessarily. There are times where you just need an hour and it's not coming. But we've developed a fondness for all of you guys, so that makes it easier. And he's making progress, so who really cares how inconvenient it is?
What color?
You're funny.
I like Spider-Man.
You're funny. You were such a clever. Hey, she's not a jungle gym. You're funny. Hey. You're funny. You're funny. Go. Hey, you wanted to go color. Yeah, go color.
Dad, come here.
Color.
I have colors for you.
Here. Do you want green or orange? Which one's orange? Green or orange? Orange, yeah. Good job.
I see changes in him every day. Today we went to OT and just watching him climb up a rope. And he got to the top and he was on a ledge and she had to show him how to turn over on his belly to climb back down. And he did it again and he got to the top and he remembered. He knew to turn on his belly and do it. So just watching how he's soaking up stuff and being able to adapt it so quickly is pretty impressive. Now, if only that would work with the eating. That's probably still our biggest challenge is eating.
Yeah, eating's it's a task. Therapist came out because he needed to eat. And it probably took him, 10 minutes to really take his first bite. But what he'll eat and how he'll eat and when he'll eat are very challenging stuff.
I think the goal is to develop the relationships with the girls first and to be more compliant on behaviors that don't involve food or eating. He gets really worked up when new foods are introduced to him. It's a good 10, 12 minutes before he'll even consider eating anything else. So we have to get past that and probably introduce it to him a lot and let him play with it more and just get that fear or anxiety out of him. But it's going to be a slow process, I think.
He's making something very intricate. And I'm surprised. I was talking to Suzanne that because he's so into textures and how things feel, and I was surprised that he even wanted to touch it.
We had peaches in front of him today with applesauce and tried to make it fun to run trains through, and he was not happy about the whole thing.
Can we squish it?
Are you all done with the Play-Doh?
Yeah, let's go.
All done.
Clean up.
Thank you. Good job.
Uh-oh, you don't want to be done yet.
We can play with it later, Jack Riley. We're done for now, okay?
You want to eat?
Are you hungry?
Are you hungry? You want lunch?
Do you want lunch? Do you want to watch Pocoyo with lunch? Pocoyo? Oh, Jack.
How has it been like just adjusting to there's days when he's having therapy and he's having difficulty, he's crying and
Those are hard on us because I think we're both overly sensitive anyway, and he's your son. Those days haven't been that many where he's like emotionally drained or anything. I think he's made the adjustment maybe better than we have.
Thursday, I remember sitting in my office and hearing him cry pretty hard, and I had to call a girlfriend. Mike was gone, so I had to call a girlfriend, and I was pretty close to tears. And she talked me off the ledge, which was a good thing. But since then, it's been easier to hear him. I haven't heard it as bad, or it hasn't felt as bad, but I know it's good for him, and I know that he's being asked to do things that he's not used to being asked to do. So there's nothing wrong with that.
This one. What color?
Green.
Green. Yeah.
Last night, there were bubbles on a page, and not only did he say bubble and pointed at all the bubbles, but then he decided to pop the bubbles and started saying pop. And so he's using the words right, and that book, I think we went through every page, and he found something on every page that he knew the word for.
Go get him. Pop.
Nothing is easy for him anymore, even with us. I think if he wants to do anything or if he wants to try anything, he has to ask us for it or say the color or do something. So I think we learned that from ABA.
Pocoyo or Baby Babble? Babble.
Good choice.
Baby Babble.
Baby Babble. That's good talking.
Bubbles.
Bubble.
Pop. If he's watching a video with you, if he turns and make sure you get. Did you hear that? Did you hear that? So he's fully engages you to make sure you're paying attention, and that's great because I like when he looks at my eyes.
Welcome back to Autism Live and to Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy. As we said in the last hour, Nancy Allspot Jackson won't be joining us today. I'm sure you can all understand we had the the ceremony, the funeral for her husband on Saturday, and she's taking a little bit of time off, which we're thrilled that she's taking the time. And I thank you for all of the messages that you guys have sent of love and caring and prayers, and I will forward all of them to Nancy and Wyatt. They're so, so appreciated, I can tell you that. We've got a great show for you, though. This hour, we're going to be joined by Elaine Hall, better known as Coach E. She is the founder of the Miracle Project, the project that was documented in Autism the Musical, and of course she's continued to do wonderful, wonderful things, and has just come back from a trip to the White House. So we invited her to be here today to talk to us about that and fill us in on what exactly was going on at the White House, because I think it's pretty exciting. I wanted to start, we always start within the news, but an amazing thing happened this week that we had a lot of viewers send us stories and information that they wanted us to cover, some of which we're going to do, and then we have a bunch of other stories that I wanted to cover as well. But there were some stories about some workshops, and one of our favorite viewers wrote to us and said that there are a series of workshops that are coming. It's free in February, mini course, Born to Move documentary trailer. But there are many other, as I was looking at the website, there are many other things that they sent as well. So I want to encourage you that if you are in the extreme Southern California area, to visit a site called moveplaythrive.com. And you can see that there are a series of workshops that are coming up. And you can register through this week for these workshops so that you want to look at it really soon. I think that this is really interesting, this Born to Move documentary. Really want to encourage people that if you're in that area to get an opportunity to do this. The full course starts on April 8th. So take a look and check that out. We also had this weekend in the Whittier area, here in Southern California, which is close to Los Angeles, there is a workshop that is for the transition from childhood to adulthood, and that is happening through the Autism Society of Whittier, another one of our fabulous viewers who sent us information about that. It said the title is Childhood Autism, Now All Grown Up. So for a lot of us, that's an area where we really would love to get more information. There is an advice panel, and they're going to talk about a series of things: continuing education, self-sufficiency, work, social world, dating, love, marriage, living independently, the shift of parenting an adult child, and how parents can adapt with child-adult transition, harvest good communication, and support their adult child to embrace their new adult life. Also discussions and advice on normalization with emphasis on how to deal with problematic behavior. So there you go. And if you want more information about that, definitely visit Autism Society of Whittier, and there are tickets available on Eventbrite. So just some of the events that are happening here in Southern California. And if there's an event that you want me to cover that isn't in Southern California, please let me know. Also, a couple of news stories. In Philadelphia, there's a group of advocates who've gotten together and said that it's really important to look at some of the medical treatment for autism and to look at ways to explore how do we pay for this, because many times there are drugs that are not covered by your insurance that a doctor would prescribe for your child for autism, but they're excluded. And these advocates are pressuring insurance companies to add them, but there is a process that it takes to do that. And in the meantime, they are exploring, is it possible that you could pay for additional insurance through your marketplace to be able to cover? So they're really working on this, and I think it's fascinating, something that I hope that they can help to find out. But what I love about it too is that they help you to figure out. I know when we just had the conversation on Thursday about methyl B12, and when my son was by a doctor, a physician, was prescribed methyl B12 shots, they were not covered by our insurance. And I had to fill out a series of papers to say this should be included. And it was a drop in the bucket. It did not change the the way in which it was not covered, right? It didn't change the playing field at all. But apparently, if enough people do that, eventually insurance companies do finally cave and go, oh, clearly this is something that's being prescribed for autism. So we'll keep an eye on that and let you know what happens. Okay, great, amazing story that a woman was in her car, and this happened to be an autism mom. She was in her car and driving down the road, and she saw that there was a young boy in the median and that he was behaving in such a way that something clicked in her, and she said, I think that this boy has autism. And in fact, she was right. A nonverbal boy with autism. She pulled her car over, was able to stop traffic, went into the median, and saved this young man. Her name, Ashley Cody, and this happened in Bethany, in Oklahoma, Bethany, Oklahoma. And she saw this boy, and there was a jogger who also helped her to be able to save this boy, and she was quoted as saying she helped him, and that he was nonverbal, but he was making noises, and she kept saying to him, it's okay, it's okay. And she rubbed his arms. He was missing a belt, and his jeans were starting to fall down, and he was trying to pull up his pants and repeatedly saying, uh-oh, uh-oh. And then another woman, I find it funny that it's all these women who stopped. And she, the autism mom, had her own children, and one of whom was on the spectrum, in her car that she pulled off to the side, and a pregnant woman came up and said, what can I do? So the autism mom said, do me a favor and go watch my kids. So between the three of them, they made sure that all of the kids were safe, which was absolutely amazing. The boy's father, who did not want to give his name, said he's thankful to Cody and the police for helping, and that, within an hour, this boy was back with his family. I don't think we know why he ran, but as often is the case, we don't know why. But this 12-year-old boy is on the autism spectrum and is a runner, and expresses a great deal of anxiety in many situations. One of our other viewers sent us a story talking about the problematic wandering, and that there is a company who is helping to track adults through Project Lifesaver, which we have talked before on the show, that they have wrist bands that are watches, and they look like just really nice watches, kind of hipster watches, and they have the ability to track adults. In fact, when we were at the memorial for Reed on Saturday, one of the families that was there, Romario Snow, was there with his entire family. And you may remember Romario was a young boy that at the age of 19 became distressed while in a store with his mom, with his two baby sisters, because of something that was playing on the television in the store, and he ran out of the store because he was in so much distress. He did not mean to run away from his mother, but once he stopped running, he didn't know where he was, and that started 27 days of Romario being lost. The day before he was found, Nancy and I found out about it, and we've become quite close with the family. They came to celebrate Reed's life and to be there to support Nancy and Wyatt. And it was lovely to be able to see Romario. And we had just been talking about him because he ran in the LA Marathon. And Kelby has a picture that I want you to see of Romario when he was there at the finals for the marathon. And his mom was saying to me, he had the wristband on when we were there at the funeral, and she was talking about him running in the marathon and how amazing he did, that he did finish, that they had someone to run with him, but that person had to withdraw from the race at I don't know what mile, and that mom was having some anxiety about that, but that she was able to say to him, no, you can continue running, because she had a way to track him. That if something, the worst case scenario, had startled him, and if he'd gotten off course, she would have been able to find him, and the peace of mind that gave her. So we want to give a shout out to these kinds of devices. and how important they are, and how the Chautauqua County Sheriff's Office, this is the story that was sent to us by a viewer, has begun working with Project Lifesaver to be able to provide these services to the people in their community that allow them to be able to track if somebody goes missing, that they have the ability to track them. So we want to say congratulations to the Chautauqua County Sheriff's Department. We want to say congratulations to Romario for participating and finishing in the LA Marathon. And thank you to our viewer for sending us that wonderful story. A couple of quick shout outs for some great stories of things that have lifted us up in the last week. The $3.5 million anonymous gift given to the A.J. Drexel Autism Institute at Drexel University. Woohoo. Big, big woohoo. This is an innovative incubator for pilot programs to prevent young adults on the autism spectrum from falling through the cracks after high school. This is much needed money, $3.5 million. The name of the program is Transition Pathways, and we're so excited. And whoever is the angel who gave that $3.5 million, I just want to say, money well spent. What a great, great thing, gives us all great hope. And then, of course, we have to talk briefly, if you haven't seen the clip of the amazing Sam on the Ellen Show, I want to encourage you, go on Facebook, or Google Sam dancing barista autism Ellen. It'll come up. You won't even need to put all those words in, but it's a wonderful Ellen DeGeneres. You know, I'm just going to say, how much do we love her? We've all been watching the videos of Sam the dancing barista and felt so much hope about the fact that he's working and loving working. And if you've read any more of the story of how he met a young man named Chris at a camp, and they got to know each other, and Sam was somebody that doctors had said he'll never be able to hold employment. Chris said, I don't think so. I know this guy, got him hired at Starbucks, and Ellen invited them both on, and I don't want to spoil for you because you want to watch the whole interview and see what Ellen does for them. It's truly, truly a lovely thing. We love you, Ellen DeGeneres. What a wonderful, wonderful thing, and congratulations to both Sam and Chris on being employed, being good friends, and lighting up the rest of us and setting an example for what true inclusion is. So on that note, we're going to take a break, and then in just a minute, you want to talk about inclusion, we have the fabulous coachy Elaine Hall is here. She's going to talk about inclusion, but guess where she was just talking about inclusion? She's just back from the White House. So all of that's coming up and more after these messages. Stick with us.
Hi everyone, welcome back. For the month of February, I thought it'd be a great idea to work on an activity that would help your kiddos identify and label emotions. And to help me out today is my good friend, Jamie.
Hey, Suzanne.
Hey there, Jamie.
Hey, how can I help?
Well, the way you can help me out is that because you're a sock puppet, you can do things with your face that I cannot do.
No way.
Totally. The way you can do it is that, you have interchangeable features, which means you can make super exaggerated faces, which makes it easier for kiddos to identify them and to label them.
Uh-huh.
Hey, I have a favor to ask you.
Yeah?
Can you help us out and show us some of your faces you can make?
Of course. Here we go.
Ooh, you look super mad.
I was super mad.
Can you show us another one?
Sure.
Ooh, you look super sad.
I was super sad.
All right, can you show us one more?
One more.
All right. You look super excited.
I was super excited.
I am too. You know why? Because I really want to show everyone how to make a little buddy like you. So let's get started.
The materials you'll be needing are googly eyes, felt, a hot glue gun, imagination, scissors, Velcro, some heavy cardstock, and a clean sock.
All right, let's get to it. So the first thing you want to do is you're going to grab your sock. Hopefully it's not dirty and used. It's a clean one. And what you're going to do is that you're going to take your sock, fold it in half like so, and then you're going to take your scissors and cut down. The reason we're doing this is that we're going to make an area for the mouth. The next thing you want to do is you want to trim the inside a little bit, because if you don't, it's going to have an overbite. So I'm just going to take my scissors and just trim a little bit off, not much. Now that this guy is ready, I'm going to take a hard cardstock or note card or whatever you have that's a piece of paper. I'm going to fold it in half, and what I'm going to do with this is going to be the inside of its mouth, the kind of reinforcement so you're able to move its mouth around. So I'm going to just cut it into an oval. And don't worry, if it's a little too big, you can always trim it. With this sock puppet project, the materials we'll be using, like the hot glue, is not something for children. So this is something you're going to be doing by yourself and then asking your child to join in once the puppet is ready to go. All right, now that I got that out of the way, let's start gluing. I'm going to take my hot glue gun and I'm going to glue it on the paper. Okay, once I have that, I'm going to put that in the inside of its mouth, and then I'm going to take the sock and then pull it over the edge and cover it the glue. All right, so now that I have the bottom part done, I'm going to do the same thing to the top. So now that we have this part assembled, what we're going to do is we're going to take a piece of felt and we're going to cover this area so you don't see all the scraggly stuff. So I have my piece of felt right here. I'm going to fold it in half and I'm just going to cut out a similar oval shape. And again, don't worry if it's too big, you can always trim it after we glue it on. I'm going to glue it inside. All right, now we got pretty much the base of the sock puppet. He's got a moving mouth, but wait, he's got no features. We gotta help him out with that. So what I'm gonna do is I have these pieces of Velcro that I bought that are already sticky on the back, which makes my life a lot easier. And I'm gonna peel this off and place it where I want his eyes. So one there and one there. And then I'm also gonna put them also along his mouth. And then if you want to get fancy, you can put some for his eyebrows as well. So now that I have this, we should be making some features for him. I'm alive! Alive! I had a great time with my buddy Jamie, and I hope you did too. Until next time, bye!
Bye! And don't forget to send us your photos at facebook.com/autism-live.
Can you see me? Can you see me flying by your side?
Currently, in the United States, 1 in 88 children is affected by autism. 1 in 88 means something different when your child is the one. Recovery is possible. Hi, I'm Shannon Penrod, host of Autism Live, an online show about autism broadcast by CARD, the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. I'm also the mother of a child with autism. My beautiful son, Jem. You know our old joke, guess what?
Chicken butt.
Chicken butt. So we're gonna take the chickens. But things weren't always so easy. I remember when Jem was first diagnosed with autism. I used to lay awake at night in bed and pray for someone or something that could help us to get our child back. My prayers were answered by Dr. Doreen Granpeesheh and the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. CARD treats autism and other related disorders using the principles of ABA, Applied Behavior Analysis, which is the only scientifically proven effective treatment for autism. It is also recommended by the American Academy of Pediatrics and the U.S. Surgeon General. About a year after we started treatment with CARD, we were able to see tremendous improvement, and we got our child back.
What grade are you in?
Second.
You are a smart cookie, huh?
Mm-hmm.
Do you like school?
Yeah.
Do you have any good friends?
Yeah, Oscar.
Oscar is your best friend?
Yeah.
And my child is just one of thousands to benefit from CARD ABA therapy. Across the nation and around the world, children are making amazing progress and being given the keys to unlock their full potential.
Recovery from autism is absolutely a possibility. We've been recovering children for over 20 years. It's just a matter of identifying the child's medical needs, understanding the child's sensory issues, and then teaching the child all of the skills they need in order to function normally.
We know there's hope for autism. Autism is treatable and recovery from autism is possible. Welcome back to Autism Live and to Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy. One quick programming note, I talked about a series of workshops that are free that I was saying if you were in the Southern California area, I have a correction that those are available online so that you can get to them from wherever you are. So again, the website is moveplaythrive.com. Check it out and you can register up until the last day of the month. You've got a couple of days to do that. Some really exciting workshops, and thank you for reminding me that they're online. But right now, here in the studio, we have the fabulous Coach E, Elaine Hall, founder of the Miracle Project, but that doesn't begin to describe all the wonderful things that you do and that you are. You're an author, you are an advocate, you are an amazing person in our community. I'm always thrilled when we have an opportunity to have you here with us. And I was teasing before that you just come back from an amazing trip where you went to the one and only White House. And I am so excited to hear, I just saw a little bit on Facebook, there you are, Kelby showing the picture of you at the White House. Very impressive. So tell us why you were there and what was happening.
So Shannon, always so wonderful to be here on Autism Live, and you really make the world know what's happening in autism. So thank you, and thank you for
thanks. We try,
here.
But you're doing, and that's
so thank
amazing.
you. Well, I have to tell you, I got an email that said you were invited to the White House, and my first inclination was, is this for real? So I texted my friends and colleagues, Shelley Christensen, who literally wrote the book on Jewish inclusion, and also my dear friend and colleague, Jennifer Laszlo's Mizrahi, who started a program called Respectability for adults with disability. And I said, I just got this email, is this for real? And Jennifer got back to me and said, yeah, it's legit. So at that point, I wasn't afraid to put in my social security number, and because that's what you have to do in order to get clearance.
You can't just show up.
Can't just show up, and I had to make sure I got clearance, and I got clearance.
Yeah.
So, but here we go. So basically, it was a conversation on inclusion of Americans with disabilities in the Jewish community. And
something that you know a great deal about.
Thank
And
you.
if I were going to put together a list of people to talk about that, I would want you at the top of that list.
Thank you.
But they put together an amazing array of people to come and talk about this.
Yes.
And why?
Wow, what a great question. Why? Wouldn't it be great if we didn't need to convene to talk about including individuals with disability? But regrettably, unfortunately, we do.
Yeah.
So regrettably, we have to create opportunity that doesn't exist. Positively, how wonderful that there are opportunities that are being created today that do exist.
Yes.
And this was, well, first of all, there's February has been deemed Jewish Disability Awareness and Inclusion Month.
Yeah.
Shelley Christensen, who's a mother of a son with Asperger's, in 2001 was hired in Minnesota to create an inclusion program for synagogues, because many people who have disabilities felt left out and estranged from their community. And Shelley called some synagogues and said, you know, we'd like to know what kind of programming and what do you do? And the answer was, we don't have anyone with a disability here, so we don't need that.
And we know that's not true, right?
Well, we know why is there no one there with a disability. Because no one feels that there's a place. So she took it on herself in 2009 and said, you know, I want to start this month Jewish Disability Awareness and Inclusion Month. And from that, there were 4 other, it was become part of a consortium, and there were 4 other cities that joined in, and now it's worldwide.
Yeah.
From one woman, Shelley Christensen. So basically, she created Jewish Disability Awareness and Inclusion Month, which is in February. And the conference, the conversation at the White House was in recognition of this month and actually taking it a step further. So I was simply part of the conversation. There were self-advocates that were on the panel. Matt Nosenchuk was who's the associate director and liaison to the Jewish community. He's the White House of public engagement. He brought in the Jewish component in honor and respect to this day, and then Maria Town, who is the disability, the director and advisor for disability for the White House. The 2 of them joined together to make this day happen, along with Judith Heumann, who was a special advisor for international disability rights in the U.S. Department of State. So they actually put this together quite quickly, and knowing that there was a need to get this conversation going.
Yeah. And I think, part of the reason why I asked why is what I see is that the Jewish community does this so much better than anyone else does. You are light years ahead of everyone else. I love that our White House wanted to honor and to get people together to talk about it, because this is a model that everybody needs to be following. I see that there are so many programs that, I'll hear about and I'll go, who's doing that? Oh, it's the Jewish community that's doing that. The inclusion, I'm sure that there's always room for improvement, but I think that the Jewish community is setting the pace for everyone else, and that's an important thing.
Yes, I mean, I'd like to say yes, but I have to add yes and, because there are faith-based communities are really stepping up. The Mormon Church has always been very inclusive of individuals with disabilities, and the Catholic Church is convening and doing all kinds of things. I mean, I think here in Los Angeles there is a tremendous amount being done in the Jewish community. And I think what we know is, I identify myself as Jewish, and that's my culture, and there's so much more to do. And I think that's what this conversation was about. Yes, we've come a long way. I mean, part of, and this is what Matt, the theme that Matt brought out in Jewish, in our tradition, we say B'Tselem Elohim, which is we are all created in God's image. And if we are all created in God's image, then how can one person have access and another not?
Absolutely.
So if I've created a program called Inclusion from Within. And what that is it's not about, oh, let's bring in this person with a disability. It's not about that. It's about how do we in our own being separate out from ourselves? How do we judge ourselves? How do we feel that we have to rise to this ridiculous sense of what is perfection, rather than we are all perfect. We are all created in God's image. And that by not having one person part of that dialogue, we are not whole. We are ripped apart. Judith Heumann, which is a Jewish value of tikkun olam, we must heal the world. That is our mission. We are here to help impact change. And wonderful. Where there is distress, how can we make that better?
So where can people go to find out information about the Inclusion from Within?
So that would be my personal email. It's Coach Elaine Hall @gmail.com.
Wonderful. Yeah. I'm all choked up. We're going to take a break, and then we're going to come back and talk some more with you about this and some other things that you have going on, because you always have so many wonderful, amazing things happening.
Thank you.
All right, stick with us. More Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy after these messages. swing on this wonderful day, this wonderful walk with Mr. Matt Asner. Talk to us about today's walk. Do we have any facts, figures, numbers, or just pure emotion?
Just pure emotion. I'm about to get the numbers. We'll see what it is. Okay. I think it's probably close to 1.6, probably. That's my feeling. But it's incredible. We had 55,000 people plus here today, and you know, honestly, I've been here 7 years. It gets better and better and better. So.
And really, what you fostered here today is hope. I know that's your favorite four-letter word.
Where are we without hope?
Where are we?
Really, I mean, seriously, where are we without hope? Hope is everything. Hope is eternal.
This is a pretty big event. Every year I love it. What does this event mean to you?
Well, I just think it's great that you see so many people coming out to support, autism.
So we're here with Max Burkholder. There's a whole community of people that are going to love you no matter what you do, no matter where you go, no matter what you do, and that's the autism community. Are you okay with this? Is this a good thing?
I'm pretty okay with it. This seems to be a pretty happy, supportive community.
Well, what did you learn about autism through portraying this wonderful character?
Sort of the individuality of it. You know, like with autism spectrum disorders, a tendency is to sort of generalize everybody with sort of the same degree of affliction as sort of exactly the same, and very generalize them a lot. But something I found while just talking to everybody, and that I tried to put into the characters, just the sense of individuality that all of them have, everybody has. And so at a certain point it became not really even portraying autism, it just sort of became portraying the character.
I want to thank you on behalf of everybody for what you do.
That's very sweet.
To bring awareness and to raise money. That's a tremendous, tremendous legacy. But as a dad, you've got other things that you're doing as well.
Yeah.
I want to know, as a family, if you have any advice, what's been something that's been helpful to you personally?
You know, get your autistic kids out in the community. I mean, my son's got a guide dog, so he goes to a lot of cool places. He surfs, he skis, does gymnastics. He's actually trying Hebrew school. I'm not quite sure if he knows what's happening there, but he does all kinds of cool things, and he has a lot of friends. Right now, most of his friends are the adults who take care of him, and over time, hopefully he'll have more friends who are his age, and you'll see him walking around, and people won't be nervous around him. The dog's been very helpful with that. It's like the dog is like the most infectious thing in the world. Like, everybody wants to be near the dog, and he sees that, and he gets some of that affection laid onto him. So as a family, you know, we're just there to support Tyler and make him happy.
Welcome back to Autism Live, to Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy, and to this wonderful moment that we're sharing with Elaine Hall, also known as Coach E, because she is the founder of the Miracle Project, and she does amazing work. For those of you who don't know about the Miracle Project, you should. We talk about them a lot here on the show because they're a miracle. I mean, let's be honest about it. You're a miracle. You're also an autism parent, an advocate, an author. You're doing so many things around the world that it's just amazing. We've been talking with you a little bit about this recent trip that you just took to the White House to talk about inclusion for people with disabilities within the Jewish community, and the example that the Jewish community has set, and how you've got an entire month now of acknowledging awareness about this. It's an amazing, amazing thing. So you're there at the White House, and I know we wanted to talk specifically about some of the more inspirational things that were going on there. Tell us what happened.
So there was a panel of two self-advocates, and also the two self-advocates were Aaron Kaufman and Rudy Regan. And a couple, I mean, there's so much amazing things that happen there, but I want to talk, so moved by Rudy Regan, and she's a rabbinic student. She has autism, and she started out by going like this, okay? And then she said, you might look at me like I'm strange if I'm doing this, but then she put her talit on, her talit is the prayer shawl, there, and she put her prayer shawl on, and she started going like this. And you see, we, in context,
right,
the same movement can have so many different expressions and feelings. And what's wrong with going like this?
Yeah.
And she spoke about, I mean, we talked about how B'Tselem Elohim is a core value. We are created in God's image. That's a core value in Judaism, as well as Tikkun Olam, heal the world. But there's also another value, which is that we are commanded to save lives. And when you are kind to someone, when you include someone, you are saving their life. Depression can kill. Anxiety, isolation, those can kill. And our friends with autism experience that. So when we are kind, when we are inclusive, we are saving a life. And I mean, I know that in my work with the Miracle Project. I've seen just transformations of my students and families. And I know that in my work in faith-based communities. Dr. John Weiner, who's the executive director of Jewish Association for Developmental Disabilities, spoke about how we have to really be building a new leadership and with young people. And Sheila Katz was there representing Hillel, which works with the college communities. And she is making all of her, everything open and inclusive. And she very boldly and courageously shared about when she was not doing right and when things were not inclusive. There was a man who was talking, Aaron Kaufman, and he has CP, and he talks about how so many people just, they don't assume competence.
Yeah.
They assume because you have a disability that you're not thinking. And how we have to really switch that. That's where I feel my work is so strong with inclusion from within, because it presumes competence.
Yes.
And it shares that everyone has a gift, everyone has a talent, and it's up to all of us to listen. Yeah. A real Judith Human really focused on listening. And it reminds me, in Judaism, there's a prayer called the Shema, and it's all about listening. It's all about listening. So, and I like to say, listen to the child that does not speak, because they have the most to say. For me, it's not so much about being inclusive, because I don't want to be included in my synagogue or my church or whatever. I want to belong.
Yeah.
So that's where I feel this is the beginning of a conversation. But what we have to do next is provide opportunity where we belong. We're not just included in the conversation. And with our friends with autism, I shared this after the panel. Then there was about an hour of a personal conversation where we were all talking. And one of the things that I shared was that sometimes for our kids, you know, and young adults and adults with autism, a synagogue can be really noisy. There's a lot of singing, and contemporary synagogues have music and guitars, and it can be too loud. So I know my son Neil, who loves to go to synagogue, he'll sometimes stand in the back. And we belong to a synagogue called Nashuva. As part of Jewish Disability Awareness and Inclusion Month, my students from the Miracle Project co-led services at Nashuva.
Wow.
And Neil typed his part of the service, part of his sermon, which was about inclusion. Lexi from the movie Autism the Musical sang Hatikva. And Adam played cello as part of, and Quinn Lohman was a song leader. So they belong to the synagogue. And we just did a similar thing at Beit Teshuvah, which is a Jewish recovery home. And we've started partnering with them. And so our students co-led services again. Wonderful. That's where we have to be making a difference. Not finding another room for them to go to, but allowing everyone to see what's possible.
It's so interesting because I think part of the problem is that people don't understand what including means.
Yes.
They've gotten used to this old idea. I love the idea of saying belonging because it would be very hard. I know that there are a lot of people who say, oh, we do inclusion, but as you said, it's a separated thing, and they don't understand. And I know I have been guilty of this in my life as well. That there are times when I'll sit and I'll go, now wait a second, what just happened, you know? Because inclusion, true inclusion, is not always easy.
Right.
It is not always the first thought that occurs to people, but you were saying it saves lives. It saves lives on both sides.
Yes.
On both sides. That when we are truly inclusive, it saves our lives. I don't think anybody has ever been someplace and had that, some sort of a moment where something happened and you realized, oh, okay, this is how I want this to go, and been inclusive and not been changed by it, right?
You're giving me the goosebumps up and down, up and down. There's so much to comment on that. One of the things we've partnered, the Jewish Federation has given us a lovely grant, and we've partnered with Beit Teshuvah, which is a recovery house for using the Jewish principles for individuals who are recovering from drug addiction and alcohol. And so the recovering addicts and alcoholics are now volunteering in our adult programming.
Yeah.
And they say to us that it's saving their lives.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we're going to be creating a whole musical with combining our adults. What's so cool is when our young adults go hang out at Beit Teshuvah, it's like we're all quirky.
Right.
So there is no like us and them.
Yeah.
There's a real common bond of we got to get through this life together. We've all got something. We got to get through it together. And really, that's the human condition.
Yes.
We all have something.
Yes.
We maybe neurotypicals are better at pretending that we don't, but that's inclusion from within. That's my program, which I'm really committing so strongly to for faith-based organizations. I'm doing private coaching, I'm doing online classes, I'm doing webinars, and I'm doing organizational structure, along with Shelley Christensen, who has written the book on inclusion. And but what I do is I help work with the individual to realize that we're all one.
Yes.
We're all one. And when you're not including one person, we're ripping out a part of our own soul.
Yeah. Well, and there's a level of irony always. The moment that I always think back on is that there was one apartment building that we lived in that there was never any parking. We had to park across a busy street and then get out of the car on the busy street and cross the street when we would pick Jem up from school. And it always gave me all kinds of anxiety. And it took him forever to get his bag together and get out of the car. And I was always saying to him, now get it all together because when we go to get out of the car, I don't want to be standing in the street waiting forever to have you get out of the car. I was afraid we were going to get hit by a car.
Yeah.
And I would have great anxiety about this. And I would say, now, we're going to get out of the car and we're going to get out this way. And he would say, well, what if we did it? No, we have to do it this way. And I would say, we have to do it this way, until one day he said to me, do you have autism? Because the need to do it a specific way, isn't that one of the symptoms of autism? And I really had to stop for a moment and go, how much does this happen in life that we are saying, well, the person with autism has to do it this way because of our inflexibility?
Oof, right.
High irony, right? Well, you can't do this because it doesn't fit with my plan and I'm inflexible, and then we accuse them of being inflexible. Hello? It really shifts the whole conversation, and for the first time I went, oh my goodness. My kid with autism pointed out that I'm inflexible.
Well done.
Well done. Yes. Yeah. What a great thing.
Yeah.
But, I do think it takes you have to be willing to be humble. I'm always humbled when I realize that I'm not on the right side of that equation.
Yeah.
It's very humbling.
Well, it's humbling, but it's also awareness. And awareness is awareness and acceptance. And we have to be aware first. I mean, that was one of the things that Dr. John Weiner had said, was that the younger people, because of so much had been put in place, that awareness just becomes natural.
Yes. It's a lovely thing.
And so I think we don't want to beat ourselves up for having that awareness. And Dr. Barry Prezant, in his new book, Uniquely Human, says how we're all spectruming.
Yes.
It just matters, some people need more support than others.
Yes.
We're all uniquely human. And it's our humanness that's our commonality.
Absolutely.
The other thing, what we do at the Miracle Project is reverse inclusion. So it's not like, let's just put someone, with disability and throw them in an environment that's going to just, fail for everybody.
Right.
So that's why we like to bring the typical population into our world first.
Yes.
And then there's that understanding. And that's what I'm doing with faith-based communities as well.
It's lovely.
I create a small service, a small, calm, sensory-friendly service within the structure of a large synagogue. I create a small service first. And then, like with my son, he learned everything. He learned what these strange words were. Why do you stand? Why do you sit? And so he learned it in a small environment first. And now he can go into a synagogue of 500, 1,000 people and know exactly what to do.
Really wonderful.
So it's about having that revolving door, not
Yes.
like, oh, okay, we have a program here for people with disabilities.
Right.
No, it's revolving. We need that program first, and then we want to have it like invisible so that you can go back and forth. And if it gets too loud, then you go to another room.
Absolutely. And that's for everyone, not just people who have a quote-unquote disability.
That's right.
Tell them your website again, because then we have to take a quick break.
Okay, so for me, for coaching, and it's Coach Elaine Hall at gmail.com.
And what's the Miracle Project website?
And the Miracle Project is www.themiracleproject.org.
Okay. We're going to take a short break, and then we're going to come back to finish out the show with Coach E. Stick with us.
Hello, fellow activists. In our last segment, we talked about step number 2, educate yourself. Step number 3 is get support. Now, any journey can feel overwhelming if you feel like you're walking it alone. Well, you're far from alone, because with 1 in 50 kids diagnosed with autism today, there are a lot of us out there. Of course, there's always the issue of financial support. Now, there's a handful of organizations out there that offer financial support to families in need. ACT Today, or Autism Care and Treatment Today, is one of them. Visit our website at www.act-today.org to find out more about our grant process. I want to talk about a different kind of support today, emotional support. Now, you can get that from other travelers on this path. Some of the best advice I've ever received is from the moms of other kids with autism who went to school with Wyatt or were involved with programs with him. Then there are the pioneers. These are the families that have gone through this years ago, and there was very little information out there. All of these people seem to have the desire to pay it forward. Now, one of them, Lisa Ackerman, who is one of my mentors, started an organization called TACA, Talk About Curing Autism. She actually took the concept of mentors and support groups and made it available to everybody. You can go to their website, talkaboutcuringautism.org, to find out more. During the first and most difficult year after Wyatt's diagnosis, I wrote an email to close family and friends, letting them know what was going on and the challenges our family was facing, and why we dropped out of sight. I was amazed at the outpouring of love and affection and all the help I received from that email. First, you have to be vulnerable. You can't be afraid to ask. Try this out. Could you cook me a meal? Are you going to the market? Can you pick me up a few things? Could your kids play with my kid and make them feel included? Or can you come over and clean my house? Well, maybe not that last one, except with your best friend. And maybe the best support of all is having someone that listens, and that doesn't cost a dime. So until next time, surround yourself with the loving kindness of others and keep the faith.
Welcome back to Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy. I am here with Coach E, Elaine Hall from the Miracle Project, but she has been talking with us about inclusion from within, and what an amazing, I think what an amazing thing for people to know about. So tell us a little bit more.
So I want to talk a little bit about a rabbi, Rabbi Lynn Landsberg, who was very influential on getting the ADA passed. She was one of the clergy who supported 25 years ago the Americans with Disability Act. And she, 2 years later, she had a near fatal car accident and had trauma to her brain. So she became disabled. She became the recipient of what she helped put into place. And now she's presents all over the world in faith-based, bridging the gap with inclusion. And she's one of my mentors and heroes. And what I've learned from her, and also Rabbi Brad Artson says, if we're not hit by a bus, we're all going to have a disability. So the time for us to have compassion, the time for us to listen to someone who doesn't speak, that could be us. That will be us if we, God willing, live to be old enough. We need to create a compassionate, understanding culture now, so that when we are lonely, isolated, in our senior years, our lives will be saved. Our lives will be saved by what we put into practice now. And I think all of us can be more inclusive just by including those parts of ourselves that we deny.
What do you mean by that exactly?
Well, if we are always aspiring to perfection and to an image of something other than who we are, we're going to have a self-hatred. And that self-hatred is going to be placed onto the weakest of our culture. If we can embrace and love ourselves profoundly, then it's going to be so much easier for that love to overflow and for that patience to be there when someone moves a little slower or thinks a little less quickly. By loving ourselves profoundly, our hearts will be open to embrace and love others. By appreciating ourselves, we're not just be aware of disability and aware of autism, we're not only just accept autism, we're going to appreciate autism.
Yeah. And I love that, both of us have theater backgrounds, and you have been able to take your passion with theater and put it together with your passion for this community.
Yes.
And have amazing fireworks go off when you put the two of them together.
Mhm.
And I mean fireworks in every possible direction, because I now have had the benefit of being an audience member at some of your shows and have seen what it does to an audience, which is amazing. I think at some point somebody should just film an audience watching your show and not film what's happening on stage, because part of the big thing that's happening is happening in the audience, which is a huge, huge thing. And then there's what's happening on stage, which I now have had the benefit of. My son did a 1-week camp with you last summer, and just one week, and to see, what happened with him within that week. I just think it's really incredible work that you do, Elaine, and so wonderful that we've had the opportunity to have you here to talk about. And of course, the White House should have invited you to talk about this. Of course, they should have done that, because you've been putting this together for a long, long time. So we salute you and the work that you do. And I think what an amazing, amazing event. And how great is the taste of the White House to have this happening?
Well, I think, and again, I was, just part of the conversation. I want to, full disclosure, I wasn't one of the panelists, but it was my voice that spoke afterwards with people, and is able to take what I learned there and bring it to the world. And I think more than anything is by having the White House endorse and support this, faith-based organizations are going to take this more seriously.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
people say, oh, we're losing congregants, we're losing congregants. No, there's so many of us that are on the outside
Yeah.
going, wait, look at me.
Yeah.
We want to belong.
Absolutely.
We want a place. My kids with autism are some of the most spiritually elevated human beings on the planet. Their voices need to be heard.
Absolutely.
So thank you so
well
much.
put. So
Thank
well
you.
put. I thank you so much for being here. Unfortunately, we're out of time. And I want to take just a minute to remind everybody that on tomorrow's show, we are welcoming back the fabulous Kerry Magro. And he's going to be talking with us about a film that he's been working on that is about to come out, Jane Wants a Boyfriend. So that's going to be very exciting. And he's also going to give us an update on some of the things that are happening in the month of April. And I know if you guys have not seen Kerry on the show, Kerry always inspires me out the door, around the corner, and down the block, because he's just that kind of a guy. So we're out of time. Thank you to Coach E. Thank you to Dr. Granpeesheh for the first hour. Please give all your kiddos a hug from me and one for you too. Bye-bye for now.